Get my microphone cable out of the way. I decided to turn the lights behind me off so that I'm not quite as backlit. Hopefully that looks good. I'm going to take a few notes here on my laptop. As always, if you're watching the feed and you're a Kydex holster maker, please tag your company name in the comments so that I know who I'm talking to. Also, like and share the feed, please. If there are other holster makers you know who would benefit from the discussion, please get out your phone, send them a text. You've probably got your phone out already if you're watching this. Send them a text, give them a quick call, let them know where and how to tune in. Hopefully they can stop by and check it out. Hello, Shane. I've got a tool tip for you at the beginning, and then we'll get into the discussion of cost versus value in holsters, both our end product and also when you're looking at individual steps in your production process and how to decide where to spend your time and where to spend your money. Hello, Bobby Jackson. Hello, Jeremy. It's been a busy few weeks for me. I know on one of my last live videos, I talked about the hill that I was currently climbing, getting this big automated vacuum former running, and it's running. So I've been making some parts on it, which is super exciting, and we'll see how much I can start cranking out per week once I get it running every day, which it's not currently doing, but that's just because I'm busy with other stuff. Hello, Clark. Hello, Harrison. Thank you guys for stopping by. Please like the feed, share the feed, and send somebody a text and invite them to it. So, over a year ago, I started publishing on my Instagram page some photos and videos of non-membrane forming with my first prototype Swift presses, small ones I built out of plywood, some with hinged frames, some without, some with toggle clamps. I was experimenting. And in about the past 6 weeks, I've started to see a lot more guys building their own non-membrane formers, making their own trim mold guides, really starting to take the leap, get over that hurdle, and try it. And that connects directly to our discussion tonight on the cost versus value equation, because this is a constant tension the businesses are operating under. What does it cost? How much value does it bring? Hello, Paul. Hey, PJ. And so one of the things that is always one of the first cost versus value discussions that comes up with non-membrane forming is the plastic waste. Man, this wastes so much plastic, and it's totally true. It wastes more plastic. Per holster, you will always use more plastic if you are non-membrane forming. Hello, Chris. Hi, Keith. But in order to get in, well, let me back up for a second and do the tool tip. Guys who have been making their own trim mold setups with flat material, with dowels for the pegs, however you're aligning and holding your part, if you're considering it, this is the kind of router bit you need. You need a flush trim bit with a shank mounted bearing, not one out at the tip. You need it on the shaft. Okay, this is a 1/2 inch diameter by 1 inch length of cut. This bit is from Amana Tool, available on Amazon. Part number 45460. This is a 3/4 inch diameter by 1 inch length of cut bit from Freud. Part number completely illegible since I've had this for so long. But this is what you need. And this bearing rides against your template, and then the cutting edges take off the Kydex that hangs over your mold. So make sure you use the right kind of bit. If you just have a regular straight cut bit that has no bearing and you try to guide it against the template, you will shred your template and possibly parts of yourself. So don't do that. When it comes to buying carbide, you do need carbide. You want carbide teeth. You don't want high-speed steel. 3/4 doesn't necessarily give a better cut, Chris. It's just a question of what are the tightest radiuses you need to get inside. So you could do this with a 1 inch diameter bit, unless the profile of your holster has inside curves that a 1 inch bit wouldn't fit into. I have 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 7/8 bits. I do run them at different speeds. Typically, the larger the diameter of the bit, the slower the RPM, because then you're dealing with actual surface speed at the teeth, and you don't need as many RPM to get the same surface feet per minute. So yeah, get a good bit, buy good carbide. Don't buy Chinese-made junk off eBay. Expect to spend $25 to $40 on a bit like this. You get what you pay for, and you want a bit that has, this is very important, these have a set screw collar, this guy, underneath the bearing. You have to make sure that that's tight and stays snug. If that loosens, vibration, when it's mounted in the router, will cause this collet to walk down the shank, and then your bearing can sink. If your bearing sinks below the table, all of a sudden you now have just a regular straight cutting bit with no bearing riding, and you can hurt yourself. So make sure, this is a thing that needs to be checked occasionally to make sure that that is still snug and that the bearing is still all the way up. Yeah, Clark, cutting tools are worth the investment. They have a higher cost, but they bring greater value. So that was the tool tip. If you're buying the flush trim bit, the brands I recommend are Whiteside, Amana, Freud, CMT. Any of those four is solid. They'll give you a fine bit. But buy good stuff. Life is too short, and you only have 10 fingers. Don't buy cheap carbide and try to get by with the barest possible. How close do you have to trim with the bandsaw? Harrison Jones asks. Generally, the closer the better. It's a balance of speed and efficiency. So the closer you cut to the line, the easier and less frightening sometimes the trim mold can be. If you have a lot of plastic hanging off the edge and you're trying to take off, 3/8 of an inch with your router bit, that's a really heavy cut. That's going to vibrate a lot. It's going to feel scary, and it's not going to be as safe. So generally, I try to leave at or slightly under 1/8 of an inch. I cut very close to my line, but it's not a significant increase in time cost for me to cut a little more carefully and closer to the line, and the increased safety and smoothness on the actual router trimming is totally worth it. I had one guy, he's here watching the feed right now, or was a few minutes ago, who when he first started to try it, he took his big square piece, he didn't pre-cut it at all, and he tried to just run the router bit straight through all the rough plastic, all the way into the trim, and then cut around it. And it was a disaster, because that's not what it's designed for. So usually I take a shell, I drop my trim mold inside it, and I trace it with a white wax pencil, and then I cut on the outside edge of that line all the way around, and then I put that shell on my trim mold, and it's usually good to go. Hello, Conrad. 1/2 inch diameter bit is what I use currently, Keith. You can use 3/4, you can use 7/8. It just depends on the shape of your holster. The more tight inside curves you have, like an RMR cut, that will determine the smallest bit, the smallest radius on your profile will determine the radius of the bit you have to use to produce it. The closer you cut, the less Codex dust and trimming to clean up around your router or sander. Yeah, it's just, the bandsaw is an efficient, fast way to bulk off all the material you don't need. Trim routing is kind of messy. You're throwing little flaky chips everywhere. The less material you waste that way, the fewer chips you throw around the shop, the easier it is to clean up, the less hassle it is, better in every way. So, back to the cost versus value thing. I got to define my terms. Cost is dollars and time. What does this cost me? What do I have to put out to get this? And then value, what is the benefit that I receive from it? And this is one of the basic reasons why cost versus value is often hard to assess, is that cost is concrete and value is gradual or subjective. Okay? That's not always the case. Sometimes some costs are hard to define and some values are very clear-cut. But oftentimes when guys are weighing a particular question of an investment, or if you're a customer and you're thinking about buying a holster, guys are looking at it and going, okay, I could buy this holster off eBay for $30, or I could buy a Henry holster for $75. Why would I buy the Henry holster? And that's the cost-value equation the customer is weighing. Are my holsters the right option for every consumer? Totally not. They were never intended to be. I don't make them for every consumer. I don't make them for every model of gun. I don't make them in colors. I don't use Tactical Infusions prints. I'm obviously not trying to sell to everybody. And so it's totally okay. I'm totally fine saying my holsters are probably not a good fit for you. Or, they might not provide the value you want depending on what you think establishes value. What my holsters do provide is very simple, streamlined design, good quality components, and very high level of execution. The products work very well. I don't send out duds because my process is very consistent and I have high standards for quality control. When a holster goes out, I know it's solid. Still, customers have preferences, and sometimes I hear back the retention's too tight or, small things that can be adjusted or changed, and I take into consideration. But I don't send out holsters hoping. Do you know what I mean? Like, boy, that holster's done. I hope I don't hear about it. Hello, Andrew Dion. Thank you for stopping by. I hope your surgery went well. I was praying for you. And so when we talk about cost, if you're a holster consumer, if you're buying a holster, the cost is dollar amount. What does it cost up front? What do I have to pay plus shipping to get this thing in my hands? The value is, how does it increase my comfort? How does it make me more likely to carry the holster regularly because it's comfortable? How much does it increase my ability to quickly and reliably access the pistol? How much does it increase my ability to carry it in a variety of environments by providing excellent concealment? All those things are value propositions that the individual customer has to assess and answer on their own. Harrison Jones says, Tactical Infusions work great on the Swift Press. I know you don't use them for inventory control. Yeah, for me, Harrison, it's just a question of where I currently am in the business. And so this is this big vacuum former, getting it up and running was my last big hill. Here's the next one. Employee number 1. I'm hiring. And so that's an exciting change for me. That's a big hurdle that I've taken a long time to build up to, and I finally just have to get over that hurdle. I have to get somebody in here because I spent most of my day today, part of my day today, folding up boxes, the custom boxes that I have made up for my Swift Press batches. That's not an effective use of my time. I should not be the guy with the tape gun putting together boxes. I have other things that are more valuable to the business that I should be doing. So I'm hiring, which is exciting and scary for me. But that's the next big hurdle. So hopefully, within the next few videos, I'll be able to tell you a little bit about who I've hired and what they're up to, which should be fun. And I also just putting that out there in Facebook Live, so now I have to do it, which is a helpful way for me to get over the hump by telling you what I'm going to do so that I have to stick to it. Or you can say, oh, he's a chump, he talks a big game and then doesn't follow through. So the holster consumer is assessing the cost of the holster versus its performance. Will it work consistently? Will it last a long time? Is it durable? If it's not durable, doesn't provide value. If I buy a $25 holster and it breaks in 6 months and I go to try to get it warranted and the company's out of business, so my investment's gone and I've got to buy again, it doesn't take that happening more than a couple of times, and you could have bought a much more expensive, better quality holster that would last and has a lifetime warranty. When it comes to production processes, I'm surprised, honestly, on the Facebook Kydex forums, on Kydex Pro, how often I run into guys who, I'll just say it, you're stingy. I'm really surprised how stingy some people are. This is business, okay? I don't always agree that you have to spend money to make money. Not always true. Sometimes you just have to change your thinking to make money. Change what you're doing. It doesn't necessarily cost money. Sometimes it only costs time. Sometimes it only costs money. Most times it costs a mix of time and money. So people are price sensitive in ways that are weird to me. The biggest one being people being price sensitive over plastic. I know what I pay per square foot of plastic. It's not very expensive. If I spend an extra dollar in plastic per holster and saved 40% of the time out of the process by changing the way I did it, for the cost of $1 in plastic, 40% of the time per unit of holster, that's obvious math for me. In my shop, with what I sell and the volumes I currently work at, that kind of time savings is totally worth $1 to me. If it was $5, maybe not. But I know what it costs. I buy plastic in bulk. I know what I pay. I know what the time is per holster cycle. I can do that math and actually weigh that cost benefit. The value it brings to me is I have a limited amount of time and there are opportunity costs. Every minute that I spend trying to save a little bit of money by using plastic more efficiently is time that I'm not able to spend developing new molds, prototyping new products, following up with customers who are using my molds, investing in things that are going to build the business and bring value to my customers. And so the obvious one is plastic costs. And I think if you can't get over this hurdle, if you can't get over that hurdle and be strictly objective about the cost of time versus the value of plastic, then I think that sets you up for getting locked in to a tight little cycle where you can't really scale and you can't really grow and you can't make strategic investments because you're looking like 6 inches in front of your feet. You have to look close. You have to take the next step. But you also have to look distance and say, what do I want to be doing in terms of volume of holsters per month? It looks like my comments have frozen up again. I hope that's not the case. Let me like a few of your comments. Thank you guys for stopping by. If a few of you could just post up a comment so I can see if they're showing up. I'm suspicious that they're not. Again, this happens to me every time. And as usual, I'll just keep going. So get over the hurdle of the cost of plastic. Mold costs. I make molds with Conrad. He sells his own molds. I sell my own molds. I'm good friends with Tony Katner, who owns Multi-Molds. I do business with DIY Holster. They sell my site channel jig and my clip drilling jig. I have business relationships with all my competitors. And that's great. I'm happy. I don't look at it as they need to fail in business so I can succeed. I'm happy to see more and more guys invest in better quality processes. If you build your own non-membrane former and build your own trim boards, great. I want to see improvement in the quality of the product and the consistency of the product that the end users get. If you go to a gun show and you see some local holster maker making really, really bad quality product at the gun show, it should make you cringe inside, not just because as a maker you look at what he's making and you know it's not good, but because you don't want the end user using a poorly constructed, unreliable product that's not going to perform well and isn't durable. I care about the end user carrying a gun. Whether or not they have it in one of my holsters or not, I don't want people carrying guns in suboptimal, unsafe holsters or holsters that don't perform well. Okay? If you have a holster that buries the gun too deep below the belt so you can't get a firing grip and get the gun out reliably, unless you have very, very specific carry requirements that necessitate that kind of deep concealment, if you need that, you need it. If you don't need that, that holster is a problem. And so oftentimes people are willing to settle for very poorly performing products that provide very little value because those products come at a low upfront cost. Okay? When I started getting into CNC, some guys said, yeah, just spend a couple $1,000, go inexpensive, and spend $1,000, get the most basic, simple, small desktop CNC you can. And some other guys told me, buy your second CNC first. If you know that 6 months from now you're going to outgrow the small, hand-built desktop kit, skip it. Skip that 6 months. Go right to the next machine. So instead of buying right away when I could have, I saved my money, and instead of spending $1,000, I spent $8 or $10 on my first CNC, and end mills and vacuum clamping and all the other accessories, dust collection, everything I needed in order to make it run well from the start. I've waited too long to hire my first employee. That's clear to me. I should have hired before now, but I also needed to get to this point in order to see how much I needed to hire before now. So, regret, not really. But I think that from here forward, that the trend in my business, which is make investments before I need them, is what I'm going to try to stick to as a plan of attack. I want to decide where I want to go and then invest my money, invest my time, invest my learning in that direction before I need it, so that when I need it, I have it. So, case in point would be this big vacuum former. So, in the fall of 2015 and spring of 2016, I was still working full-time as a school teacher, which was a job I love and I miss sometimes. But I was doing more and more holster sales. I was starting to do OEM production. I was starting to have to put out higher volume of vacuum form parts than I ever had before. I wasn't at the point where I couldn't keep up with a Swift press. And currently today, I could still keep up with one Swift press. However, I knew that very rapidly a time was approaching when I would begin to take on newer and additional clients for OEM, and very rapidly I would run out of production bandwidth. I would no longer be able to keep up with one Swift press. My head was, my head and shoulders were above water. The water was rising. Okay? I could wait until I'm up to here, or up to here to make a process improvement, or I can try to get ahead of that game so that when the water gets up to here, then I put on my life vest and I pop up and it comes back down to here. And so that's what I did. So I ordered this machine and spec'd it and had it built before I absolutely needed it, so that when the time came and I did need it, I would have it. I wouldn't be waiting on it. I wouldn't be stuck. And the cost value for me there is I paid the upfront cost a lot earlier. Okay? I paid the upfront cost months earlier than I needed to. If you're a small business, that's cash flow. Cash flow can kill you. It could have killed me. It didn't. I had contingency plans, and it didn't come close to killing me, but it was a calculated risk. It also bought me time so that I could test this thing and work with molds and buy plastic and experiment with it gradually. If I had this thing come in on my shop floor with my hair on fire, but it couldn't happen, with my beard on fire, and I had 1 week to get it working, I'd probably have a stroke. Because this kind of machine is not plug and play. This does not come in, get plugged in, turn it on, and make bomber holsters to first go round. This is back to square one. This is a totally different heat source. It's a different vacuum pump. It's different modifications to my molds. It's a whole bunch of different things that I had to work through gradually. Bringing on an employee is the same thing. An employee, those of you who have employees, they are totally not plug and play. When I've been an employee in other people's shops, I'm not plug and play in their shop because I have to learn how they want things done to make their product on their equipment in their shop so that they can get the most value out of me and that the end consumer can get the most value out of their business. So what I want to encourage is for guys to be willing to gamble a little more. Gamble isn't really the right term, but be willing to accept a little more delayed gratification, a little more postponement of the value, to be willing to pay a little more cost up front with the option of gaining even more value down the road, and of paying money now to buy time. So IMTS is happening this week, and all the cool kids are up there, and I'm still here in my shop. It is what it is. But I've been watching on Instagram all the posts from all the other machinists who I follow who are at IMTS, and I saw a picture of one of those FANUC 5-arm articulated robots polishing components at a buffing wheel. That got me thinking. Okay? What would I do if I built a little work cell and had one FANUC robot with an interchangeable jig system where I could quickly lock holster shells on and then have that little arm buff all the edges of that holster shell. What if that cost me $25,000? It doesn't cost that much. It costs a lot more than that. What if that cost me $80,000? What if I had that machine and it put out flawless edges every time in a consistent amount of time? I knew every 98 seconds a holster comes off that machine perfectly buffed. No accidentally gouging corners, no catching it on the wheel and throwing it through the window of the shop. None of that. Just dead nuts on every time. A little over a minute and a half, there's a perfect holster shell. What would that be worth to me? Well, it'd be a heavy cost up front, but think about the value. What if I got to a point where I was selling more holsters than that robot could do? You know what you do? You buy a second one, an identical one, a second identical buffer. You put identical wheels on them, and then you put the identical program on, and you load identical parts off the CNC, and then you have the two robots working in tandem next to each other, polishing edges. Now, it's totally out of my price range right now, but I'm thinking about it. Okay? And you should, when you're evaluating potential costs in the future, think big. Like, go nuts. Like, what would it take for me to put a 5-axis router in here to trim all my edges tangent to the surface so that I have, every place where the holster curves over a contour where the bit follows that arc in 3D space? What would that bring me? What would the benefit be? What would it cost me? Those kind of thought experiments are free. They cost a little bit of time, but in terms of dollars, they're pretty much free. So when it comes to molds, I mentioned this before. Conrad makes molds. I make molds. Multi-Holsters make molds. DIY sells molds. Red Feather sells molds. There's all these guys selling molds. Molds are really a cost-value thing. Of all the mold makers in the holster space, I am by far the most expensive. Hands down. If you want to get into a pistol holster mold from me, over $1,000. Straight up, always. And so people look at that and go, the cost is so high. Like if you're used to buying a multi-mold and I quote you $1,800 for some, outside the waistband, light bearing, split mold with trim molds with integrated wings, like the whole thing. Complicated, a lot of features, and it's almost $2,000. You might look at that and go, that costs so much, but I'm convinced it provides the value, And so for some companies it does, and for some companies it doesn't. It's not the case that one mold type fits every company. Guys are talking, so with the HDPE molds that Conrad and I make together, he did the scanning and the CAD work. I did a little follow-up CAD work. I did all the cam design. I do all the machining, and then he does all the fulfillment. It's a nice give and take. We each contribute about 50-50, and, we each contribute our relevant areas. He's got scanning equipment. I don't. I've got a vertical machining center, and he doesn't yet, even though he's getting one. Not yet. Doesn't have it yet. But guys are like, oh, skip the HDPE, buy aluminum. Well, not the best value necessarily. For some guys, it's obviously the better value. If you're doing a lot of holsters, go straight to the aluminum. It'll be more durable. You'll love it. If you're experimenting with non-membrane forming and you don't have a big bankroll, you don't have a big budget, and you just need to get a couple CNC machine molds in, and you need to do it inexpensively so you can get your foot into that door, get your toe into that water, try playing around in that space and see how it works, buy HDPE. Guess what? The HDPE molds pay for themselves. The HDPE molds can buy the aluminum molds for you. Seriously, get the HDPE molds, make 30 holsters on it, and then take some of that money, buy the aluminum molds. The other thing, and this is a value that the HDPE molds offer that I think doesn't get discussed very much, is aluminum molds are really excellent and very durable, but they're harder for the end user to modify. So if you need to drill into them and you need to screw down some blocking, if there are particular kinds of mods you want to do, in some cases the HDPE initially is a better fit for you if you want to be able to hand modify it. Once you've got that all dialed in and you love how it works, that would be the time then to take that HDPE mold with the blocking that you've epoxied on and pinned on and screwed on, whatever, and have that built into a full custom aluminum mold where all that blocking is designed in CAD and machined into the aluminum mold. Because if you get an aluminum mold, it's a lot harder to drill for vacuum. It's a lot harder to work with. It's metal. That's the whole point. It's durable, but it's also harder to work with. So the same thing with the Swift Press. So the Swift Press batch is going live tomorrow at noon. I've got 29 presses. One is already spoken for. But they'll go live at noon on the web store. I'm not going to be shipping until Monday, but I'll be planning to be shipping all the orders that come in tomorrow through the weekend will all go out on Monday. Some guys are like, well, why is it $400? $425 shipped. Why is it that much money? Well, you can build your own non-membrane former for less, but it's also a question of time. How much time do you have? You can order a Swift Press and have it delivered to your door, ready to plug in the vacuum hose, plug it into your pump and go. Or you can source your own materials, gradually build it together, and experiment with it. I can't say which one is the right one for you. For some guys who are tight on time, the Swift Press is obviously the better balance, the better cost-value balance because it shows up ready to use, and it's built out of solid aluminum. It's incredibly durable, and it's hefty, and it's kind of satisfying to hold. I like it. I think it offers great value, but it's not right for everybody. For some guys, the DIY Pro Press may be a better fit. If you're not buying big quantities of plastic, and you're not going to try to put 3 or 4 molds on the former at once, and you're only going to do singles, and you're doing small quantities, then buying pre-cut 10x10s from DIY and getting a Pro Press makes a lot of sense. If you're buying 2x4 or 4x4 or 4x8 foot sheets, you're buying a pallet of plastic at a time, you want to put 4 molds at a time on the former and really start to get that scale, that production time scale improved by doing multiples, then yeah, the Pro Press that does 1 at a time and the Swift Press that can do 4 at a time are not in the same playing field because those 4 holsters you make in the same amount of time. It does not take longer to heat a 16 by 20 piece of plastic than it does to heat a 10 by 10. Your heat press timer will run for the same amount of time if you get 4 holsters every cycle versus 1. At the end of the day, that's dollars. Just clearly, that's money that you can put in the bank. If you can fill the order that you get from your dealer faster because you're pressing 4 times faster, that puts money in your pocket. But when it comes to the molds, there is no one perfect answer for each company. HDPE may be a good fit for you. Aluminum might be a good fit for you. Some HDPE, some aluminum, some standard, some full customs. You have to look at that yourself, but it's the cost value thing can be deceptive. Oftentimes, what looks like an excessively high cost provides enough ongoing value that it is far and away the better investment of your money than the cheaper solution that doesn't provide that long-term value. Or you look at stepping stones. So you might go, Pro Press, Swift Press, Giant Press. Maybe that's where you're going to go. You have to look at your business, what you make, what you sell, and decide. Like the Blue Gun Exchange program that guys used to do, I think some guys still do it, where anytime a customer contacts you and wants a holster for a gun you don't offer, you say, send me a blue gun and I'll send you a holster. Like you basically buy any blue gun anybody asks for. I think that's a horrible business model. But some guys do it. And if they're happy and they're making money, I guess that's fine. I don't understand. I understand it. I don't think it makes sense. And that comes around to the question of cost and value and how you compete. And I am not in the business of putting other companies out of business. You guys know the famous Ray Kroc. If your competition is going to drown, if they're about to drown, just put a hose in their mouth. Just put them out of business. I'm not in the business of putting other companies out of business, other small Kydex shops, but I do think that there are a lot of small Kydex shops in the holster space that honestly need to go out of business. I will say that again. I think there's a lot of small holster shops doing Kydex work that need to go out of business because they're not really in business. And I'm not going to go out and try to find them and copy their product and undersell them in the local market and make them go out of business. But I do want to see the industry take steps and leaps forward in production efficiency, in holster consistency, in the quality and fit and finish of the product. I want to see the industry as a whole, I want to see that bar being raised. I want to see, what 5 years ago would have been jaw-droppingly exceptional work among holster makers. Guys were looking at me and just been like, how are you doing that? I want that to be the new industry standard that everybody yawns at. Okay, wow, it's a holster with good hardware, great injection molded clips, wonderful definition, consistent retention, really smooth, no drag. Okay, what are its benefits? What are the features this holster has? Because all of those things have become so common that everybody has them. That's what I want to see. And companies that don't even want that, aren't willing to try to do that, and don't see the value of moving in that direction, I think they need to go out of business. And I think it would be better for the industry if they did go out of business. But I'm not going to try to hunt them down and put them out of business. I'm putting them out of business now. Sort of. By doing this, by trying to share all the info I can, by answering questions. I'm still spending hours a week on the phone with random holster makers who call me up or who send me a DM on Instagram. We schedule a phone call, and they barrage me with questions, and I spend time talking to them about my process, what I make. I ask about their product, their process, what they make, how they're making it, who they're selling to, And I'm not charging for that. I'm just giving time. I'm giving energy. The guys that are willing to invest the energy to pursue that, to invest in updating their process, to be learners, to be innovating, to be willing to look at somebody else's thing and say, wow, what he's got is better than what I have. I want to go there. Those guys are going to win. I'm convinced. And I want to enable those guys by giving them all the info I can. Some of them will hopefully, possibly, not certainly, but maybe, become some of my customers, either for molds or OEM parts, jigs or fixtures, whatever else. And so by improving the industry, I benefit the industry, I benefit the end users, and I also benefit me. It's a win-win-win. But I have no illusions, I'm not romantic at all about companies that are in the space that put out a bad product, that have bad customer service, that have a horrific late 90s vintage style website, okay? If your website has a landing page with a big low-res photo of a product and a button I have to click that says enter to actually take me to your web page, don't. No. Just no. Okay? If your web page looks like MySpace circa 2005, no. If your images are all like stretched and squished and weird and look awful on mobile, no, don't do that. Don't be that guy. And so I hate websites. I hate website design. I suck at website backend. It's just not what I'm good at. My website does not get updated frequently, and it's kept very super simple on purpose. Because if I tried to offer 40 gun models in 3 holster types each, I'd never be able to make anything. I would spend all my time going bonkers trying to fix my defective, fritzy, underperforming website. It would drive me absolutely insane. And the customers would never be able to find anything. It would never work well. And so when it comes to cost versus value, the way I provide value to my end users is I limit their options. I limit their color options. I limit their attachment options. No Tiffany blue. No carbon fiber. No foamies. No J-hooks. No C-clips. no Velcro attachments, no Ulti-clips. And I'm not saying that those are bad options. I just don't offer them. And I don't want my users, I don't want my potential customers coming to the website and having this paralysis if I could choose so many options I can't even decide. Like, there is a real verifiable thing. The more options you give somebody, the harder it becomes to make their decision, and also the less satisfaction they typically have after the fact, because they're always thinking, this works well, but maybe it would have been better if I'd gotten that other option. Maybe I should have bought this attachment instead of that one. Maybe I should have gone this direction instead of that one. I just don't offer it. It keeps me sane, and it helps my customers choose more easily and quickly from a fairly limited option of menu of options. So that's my business model. Yeah, I'm certain my comments are frozen up. I haven't seen anything since 15, 20 minutes ago. So it's almost time for me to call it a night. It's been a long day for me. If you want a Swift Press, they will be live at henryholsters.com tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time is when they'll go up. And they'll be shipping starting Monday of this coming week. I don't know if I'll have time for another Facebook Live broadcast this week. I'm hoping to do Saturday night maybe. And if I do, it's time for the CNC topic. So the next Facebook Live broadcast is on CNC. Different kinds of machines, how to use them in a process, what to spend money on, what the learning curve is likely to actually be like. Should you hire somebody in who knows CNC already? Should you do it yourself? Should you consider outsourcing? Should you timeshare in somebody else's shop? Should you look at getting into a makerspace locally to you that might have CNC? What are your options? Are you near a trade school, community college? Do they have CNC? Can you take a class? Can you buy time on their machine? There are tons of different ways to do it. We'll talk about fixturing, end mills, edge finishing, post CNC, drilling, trimming, all kinds of stuff. It's probably several Facebook Live broadcasts worth. I expect the first one is going to get some basic questions answered and then raise tons more questions that we'll cover in the second one and the third one. So there'll probably be a CNC part 1, part 2, and part 3 is the plan. So I'm really excited to have gotten over the hurdle and have this former running. I'm excited to be working on hiring right now. That's going to be the next big thing for me. A couple Facebook Live broadcasts ago, I asked you guys to comment what the next big hurdle is for you. I want to revisit that. If you've watched my Facebook Live broadcasts before and you commented on that last time that I asked about a hurdle, whatever the next big step was for you, I want you to comment now and tell me whether you've gotten it done or not. Are you over that hurdle or not? If not, what's preventing you? Get over it. And if you have gotten over that hurdle, what's the next hurdle? What's the next big thing that you need to do, that you need to change, that you need to learn, that you need to invest in your shop to get where you want to go? Post it up in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and finish up here. I will certainly go through all the comments and respond in text to any questions that I didn't answer because I couldn't see them because Facebook Live is still freezing out my comments. Thanks, Facebook. I appreciate you guys spending your evening with me. Thank you very much. Have a great night.